Neil Blackmon to the show. Neil, how are you, my friend?
Good, guys. What's going on?
Are you broadcasting from a hotel?
I'm in my hotel in Charlotte.
Okay.
So when the Gators play North Carolina, I make sure that I set up client meetings in Charlotte for
big fan
the
of
day
doing
before
that.
and morning up.
Multiple people have accused me of traveling for work based around personal things that I want to do. Yeah, so shout out.
Yeah.
That's an accusation or just calling it like we see it. Just calling it like we see it. It's not an accusation if it's true.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Neil, the Gators, we talked to you a few months ago, I think before the season started. You had high hopes for the Gators, and we talked to your podcast host from Florida Gator Basketball Hour before or right as the season was getting started. Now the Gators sit at 10-0, sitting number 6 or 7 in the card, number 7 or number 8 in the country, depending on what poll you're looking at, have won all of their games by double digits this season, including a big win over Arizona State in Atlanta this week. And then we'll play the University of North Carolina tomorrow. Neil, give us kind of the summation of the season so far.
I mean, they're better than we thought they were going to be defensively, and they're as good as we thought they were going to be offensively. And it was funny. You guys had Walt last week, and when we were talking to Walt, right, I think they had played one game, maybe two. But we were talking to Walt, and somebody asked him, well, you guys haven't really been in a physical game yet. It was right before they played Florida State. Oh, the Noles are always physical. They like to muck it up and make the game kind of grimy. And Walt kind of laughed and said, I don't think people understand how physical we are. And he said, ain't nobody going to out physical us. And it was the first time I've heard a Florida player say that in 10 years in the basketball building. And, that's not any disrespect to the guys that came before them, but I just think that those three guards, Will Richard, Elijah Martin, Walter Clayton Jr., those are all big, physical, nasty dudes who, Walt, some people think, oh, you're a scorer, you can't be a physical player. He's 6'3", 200 and played DB and liked to hit people. Elijah Martin is 6'2", 220 and ran for 1,500 yards as an option quarterback and liked to lower his shoulder into people. And then Will Richard is 6'5" and looks like a tank. I mean, not the guy. What was the Ray Lewis joke about the guy you don't want to see in the alley? Like, if Will Richard weren't such a smiley, happy kid, he would be the guy you don't want to see in the alley. And those are just Florida's guards. So I think a lot of it is that level of physicality just overwhelms people. And then they've done a couple things from a coaching standpoint that you got to give those guys their flowers. John Andrushek is the defensive coordinator. He changed the way that they guarded pick and rolls. Last year, they dropped almost all their pick and roll coverage. That's fine. But I think the way that basketball is evolving, you can't just defend something one way anymore. Even when you got dudes that can protect the rim or guys that are physical and could tag a roll man, they don't do that. They do a bunch of different things. And then they went out and got Ruben Chinyailu, who I think, while he's kind of new to the game of basketball still, hasn't been playing a whole long time. He's a naturally gifted defender and athlete. So I think the combination of the staff's attention to detail and how they've gone about defending and then roster construction is everything in the NIL world, where they're still blending, high school recruiting and then how you evaluate in the portal. And a big thing to Todd, we had him on Florida Basketball Hour, after their first year. And he said, we need to be mindful. We got to go get guys that have multiple years of eligibility in the portal. And that's what they've done. And they've built around that. And he said, we're going to be process oriented that way. We don't want 1-year rentals, because then you can have one good year and your program can stumble, and I don't want that. And they've been mindful and they've done that. So long answer to say this is the roster they built to guard like this. We knew they were going to score, and they score.
How much of that is you always hear like defense is just attitude or effort? How much of that is a credit to that mindfulness in building a roster? Because you might get one-year rental guys who are like, hey, I need to put up 25. And if I don't put up 25 a game, I'm not going to get drafted, and I'm not going to waste energy on the defensive end. How much of that is just the way they've built it and having guys who are now program guys, even though they maybe didn't start their career at Florida?
Defense in basketball is suffering, right? I mean, I coach, Fawcett coaches, and we've coached high-level teams, whether they're high school teams or, Eric coaches professional players. And defense is suffering. So a lot of defense is effort. Now, like I mentioned, some of their scheme and pick and rolls, but you have to have competitors. I'll use Silk had a tweet the other day about an underrated Gator football player, and it was Antonio Morrison. And it was like, guy's a dog. He just competes.
Yeah.
And so I saw it and I thought, Elijah Martin is kind of like Antonio Morrison on a basketball court. I mean, I don't think people understand what a competitor that kid is. Like he can guard you in a stance. He will fight through a screen. He never goes under a screen. He will either go through it or around it, which takes a lot more work. And he loves a closeout. And those are like three things that a lot of players hate. I mean, it is hard to get players to fight through screens. Watch UNC and their ball screen defense. I mean, they are not interested in it. And it's part of why they're 6-4 with as much talent as they have. But, Elijah is kind of that consummate competitor on the floor with Will and Walt. And Walt would tell you, he heard it from NBA guys, right? He went to his NBA interviews going through that process, and they said, Walt, you got to guard better, buddy, because we know you could score, and your role in the NBA is come in and play 15 to 20 minutes and score, but you have to guard well enough in that league to get on the floor. There's this myth that they don't play defense in the NBA. Some of that has to do with how the game is officiated, and there's lots of problems with the NBA right now, right?
For sure.
But there's still what these franchises are looking for, and they want Wall to defend. And then with Will, he was always a good help defender. He was willing to kind of dive down and help the bigs. Wasn't great in the stance. Much, much better this season at defending on the ball. And again, I mean, Will would tell you a lot of it is what he heard from scouts. So some of it is effort, and some of it is these guys are playing their last year of college basketball, and they're playing to make money, whether it is a lot of money in Europe or in Walt's case, I think probably, a very good chance to get a two-way deal.
What do you I know we've been blowing everybody out. It's been ugly, and I appreciate them games as well. It's been just good basketball. Like you said, both ends of the court. Super impressed with their length. I think that's one of the things that help them with defense as well. When I see teams try to drive on us, man, it's just not easy to score at the cup. In a close game, is it, if we got a last shot, is it give Walt the ball and get out the way, or what do you think Golden calls in that type of situation when we do have a close game?
I think they'll have a close game tomorrow because, I made fun of North Carolina a little bit, and it's true they don't guard that much. I assure you that they're working on that. But their losses are all to really good teams. So they're 6-4. Every team they've lost to is ranked. And also it's basically a road game here tomorrow in Charlotte for Florida. So I would expect Florida to get tested and pushed. And to answer your question, I would say it's probably Walt and get out of the way, space the floor and let Walt attack. They may run Walt off a screen. He's shooting 47.5% from three off screens. That's pretty lethal. And then The other guy to kind of look out for in that moment would be Elijah Martin if they can get him downhill. You're not going to put him in like a pick and roll and say, hey, go cook one-on-one with some guy. That's not going to work. But if you can get him off a screen and get him to straight line drive at somebody, again, that's that football player mentality where if he gets his shoulder down, I mean, he's, you know, if you're 6'2", 220, not many people want a lot of that when you're headed straight at him. So he's a tough deal. He's a load. I would say he would kind of be your other option at the end of a game.
That's like if Jordan Scarlett had any kind of shot.
That's it, man. It is different. Like if you go to, you know, now that you're doing Florida Victorious stuff and you're Mr. Basketball sitting in the suites, Nick, like
I was worried.
You come to come to some of this media stuff and you'll see Elijah Martin and you'll be like, does that guy play running back? Like, what's his? I mean, he is a chiseled dude. Yeah. Mississippi tough, man.
Is the SEC far and away, you know, the better league than the ACC now at this point? What's your opinion?
Yeah, it's amazing. And I did an article about it at Saturday Down South. Talked to a lot of people, and you know, everybody says, "Oh, it's the football money," and yes, it is the football money. It's also that, you know, 10 years ago, they called Billy Donovan and John Calipari and they said, how can we get better at basketball? And Billy said, well, you guys got to get better coaches in this league. Candidly, he said that the coaching in this league is not as good. The practice facilities, he said, meaning Florida, he said, Kentucky and Arkansas have nice practice facilities. Nobody else has good facilities. That was 10 years ago. Now that's not the case. So all of it was built up because SEC Network had all this programming to fill, right? And so if you got 3-4 months of programming where you can put basketball on, live TV is good programming. So they knew that they needed to start winning these games to get better. So it's been kind of this slow build. And now I don't think it's going anywhere, especially with the House settlement. Once revenue sharing starts, forget about it. Like the SEC is not going anywhere in this sport. And the schools that are committed to winning, forget it.
The same thing is happening with baseball. I think it was just like basketball is definitely more popular than baseball. But once you could start watching the games and seeing them and you didn't have to like read a box score the next day, I think the popularity increased. But then you saw like the Alabama goes out and gets, who was the coach they got? They got a former NBA coach years ago. It didn't work out, but you started seeing SEC teams that weren't Florida and weren't Alabama start to pour money into the programs. But yeah, I saw somebody today on Twitter saying that, you know, the ESPN is pushing the SEC as a basketball conference, and then it just got ratioed. Absolutely ratioed, because I think even the numbers back it up, and you don't think of the SEC as a basketball conference, and it won't be because football is so good. But certainly the basketball has gotten tenfold better than it was, 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah, the SEC is 57-19 against. So in basketball, there's a Power 5 because of the Big East, but they're 57-19 against the Power 5. They are 89-2 in home games so far this year, which I think is just ridiculous. Yeah, and they've lost one bye game. North Florida made 17 threes on opening night and beat South Carolina. That's it. Every other bye game has been a dub for the SEC. Their overall record is 183-20.
Thank you to BKP, Avery Johnson.
Yeah, Avery Johnson. And now, just a testament to that, right? They went out and got Avery Johnson. Well, last year, Alabama lost in the Final Four, and they finished 102nd in defense last year in the country. And so Nate Oates, their head coach, went back and said, I'm going to change up some things on my staff because we will never again at the University of Alabama, when I'm the coach, finish 102nd in defense. So what did he do? He went out and hired a defensive coordinator from the NBA who had won an NBA title as his defensive coordinator. People are serious. This is not juvenile stuff anymore, man. Like, everybody like, oh, we're gonna roll the ball out. We'll sell out one game a year when Kentucky comes to town, and maybe we'll win that game every now and then, every 4 years. It is not that league anymore. So you have the quad system where you quad 1, quad 2. Every SEC road game right now is a quad 1 opportunity. Every one.
Before the year, I read Todd. He said that they could be a 3 or 4 seed, and obviously Todd, confident guy. At the time, we're probably thinking 3 seed. That's ambitious of you, Todd. It's super early right now. We're in December. March is far, far away. But the way Florida plays, and I guess we'll get a pretty good test. They have Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama pretty early on. But right now, the way Florida's constructed, the way they're playing, and knock on wood, health-wise, was Todd on to something?
Yes, if they win tomorrow, they're going to go 13-0 in non-conference. And I think at that point, if they just went 10-8 in the league, they get a 4 seed. At worst, a 5 seed in that scenario, depending on how that 10-8 shook out. So yeah, I mean, I think he's onto something. I think because Auburn is so good, I think 14-4 probably wins this league. But I would not be stunned at all if the SEC champion were 13-5. Like, it's going to be that. It's going to be that bloody. It's going to be the Barzinis at a Long Island Causeway toll booth with Sonny Corleone in league play.
Wow.
It's not
Great
going
reference.
That's
Great reference.
Fantastic reference. That's why they pay you the big bucks over there.
This is why Neil asked for such a large fee to come on our podcast.
That's it.
And we pay it in cash.
Got the NIL money. Billy's buyout still laying around.
Neil, we're realistically, right? I mean, we've watched Florida win by double digits in every game. They've beaten some quality opponents. Where do you think this team right now, if you were to stack rank them? I think they're third in the SEC right now in terms of rankings. Where do you think, if you were to prognosticate, because that's why we brought you on here and paying you the big bucks to prognosticate here, where are you looking in March where the Gators probably finished?
I did a video for our subscribers over at Florida Basketball Hour, and I ranked Florida. I got ambitious and ranked Florida 4th.
Okay.
And I almost ranked them 3rd. And what I said was I'll rank them 3rd if they beat North Carolina and Charlotte, because that would really impress me. Because I think you're going to have 17,000 Tar Heels and 2,000 Gators in that building tomorrow, and that's tough. But yeah, I like the makeup of Kentucky, but I like Florida's talent better. So I think Florida has a very, very good chance to finish 3rd or 4th in this league. And if they didn't play, if the schedule didn't shake out the way it did, where Florida got kind of a raw deal on road games, because they don't get a game at home with Auburn, and they don't get a game at home with Alabama. And I think that makes it hard to say 2nd, right? Because if you were hosting those teams, maybe you flip one of those games. But those are going to be two environments that are going to be very difficult for Florida to win in. But I think 3rd or 4th place finish is very possible. And then that, to Golden's point, then you're in 3 seed territory, even 2 seed territory if you finish 3rd.
Yeah, we must have pissed off somebody in the scheduling department in football and basketball this season. I don't know who we made mad, but hopefully next year.
What, the SEC mad at Florida? Come on.
Yeah,
come on.
Put your tinfoil hat back down, Dan.
We're everybody's favorite in Birmingham. You know this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. Neil, I think that's a good stopping point, man. Big game against UNC tomorrow night. You can catch that game live on the television. I will tell you what channel.
Will you be there, Neil?
But I don't know. Neil will be there.
I will be there.
That's why he's in Charlotte, Nick. Did you not listen to the very beginning of this call?
What show were you on, man? Like we just
I
talked
know
about
he ain't in the whole. I know he don't live in the hotel.
Neil,
I appreciate you guys.
for the three of us that listened to your entire interview, and Nick, we appreciate you coming on today. Let everybody know where they can find you online, and Neil has a great podcast as well.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Neil Blackmon, you read my stuff at Saturday Down South at NW Blackmon on Twitter. And yeah, be sure to check out Florida Basketball Hour. You don't have to, subscribe to our Patreon to listen. You can. You'll get a lot of film study and higher level basketball chat that way. But you can listen to our pod and hit subscribe, star on Spotify, whatever. All that stuff helps. So thanks guys for having me, and keep pumping sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Already, baby.
So far, not
I always
yet.
have. I always have.
Awesome, Neil. We appreciate it, man. Hey, enjoy the game tomorrow. Enjoy your trip, and we'll talk to you in the next couple weeks.